Hello, Curious Peppers. Welcome to another video. Have you ever wondered what the fuck happened during the Black Plague? I have prepared for you a video where you will say, "What the fuck, really?" 10 times. Well, unless you don't. What a stupid thing to say. Shut up, Pedro. You're not going anywhere. Sit down. Get comfy. My name is Curious Pepper. Get ready for some spicy history. Imagine a plague killing almost 3/4 of the world. You're kidding, right? Yep, I said 3/4 of the world. That already happened. At the hands of the Bubonic Plague, or the Black Death. The plague arrived in Western Europe in 1347 and in England in 1348. It faded away in the early 1350s. Because of this plague, the population in Europe was reduced from a whopping 80 million to 30 million. It killed at least 60% of the population in both rural and urban areas. Today, that's equivalent to 450 million people. People in this time thought the world was screwed and almost sure that the world was ending. Hey, do you blame them? There are many Black Death facts relating to the devastating consequences that it left behind in its trail. But did you know that the Black Death was definitely not the first epidemic? Yeah, it was the second plague epidemic of the Middle Ages. You're kidding, right? And is often referred to as the Justinian Plague. The first epidemic was widespread and caused many deaths. Yeah, it was pretty shitty too. However, it did not reach the same frightening magnitude as the Black Death. So, we're gonna give it a number 2 in shittiest plagues. Most of us grew up singing the nursery rhyme called Ring Around the Rosie. But I bet you didn't know that the song could have originated from the Black Plague. Yup, the Black Plague. Ring Around the Rosie, a song for the plague. Yup. A normal part of our childhood was playing outside during lunch, singing nursery rhymes, most of which had games that went along with them. But I bet you didn't know that scholars believe that the nursery rhyme Ring Around the Rosie was written about the symptoms of the Black Death. Yeah, it's not that fun anymore. You know, I really hate you. Shut up, Pedro, come on. Okay, now on to the Black Plague's symptoms and treatment. As we know it, the Black Plague was deadly and highly contagious. The reason for this was that it was airborne and could be passed from a person to another person from any sort of contact with the diseased individual. At this time, people in Europe had bad harvest, which caused them to lack nourishing food. This lowered the population's ability to be able to fight the disease through their immune system, meaning the Black Plague infected more people. The symptoms included a violent headache, chills, vomiting, huge lumps the size of apples that grew under the arms, as well as painful back bumps and spots all over the body. The treatment for these Black Plague symptoms were either the knife, the frog, or the leeches. Yup, the knife, the frog, or the leeches. The knife was used as a way to open a lump. Yep, a sharp knife was used to open a lump and cover it with a warm layer of butter, onion, and figs to draw the poison out. Another was to take the living frog and rub its belly all over the victim's lumps. Such methods obviously didn't work, and at this time, there was no cure ever found. This led to people dying in just 3 days of falling ill, and many died in 9 hours. The term quarantine was coined during the Black Plague. The practice of quarantine, as we know it right now, began during the 14th century in an effort to protect coastal cities from any further plague epidemics. Ships arriving in Venice, Italy, from infected ports were required to sit at an anchor for 40 days before landing. This practice was coined by them as quarantine, which derived from their Italian word 40 giorni, which means 40 days. Are you sure it doesn't mean pizza? Huh? Yeah, Pedro, I'm pretty sure it doesn't mean pizza. Don't we just love to know what causes what? What causes the clouds? What causes the wind? Why is there an angry pepper named Pedro on this channel? Well, during the Black Plague era, people didn't know what caused it. They had hunches, but it wasn't until the 19th century that researchers and scholars found that rats and fleas were spreading the Black Plague. So virtually nobody suspected in that time that the ever-present rats and fleas were spreading the Black Plague like some kind of fairy throwing rainbows. Except the rats and the fleas were throwing death. So what was life before the Black Plague, you may ask? Music was abundant and it was cheerful. However, during the plague, music was rare, and if heard, it was sad and grim and depressing. I mean, they only sang about the Black Plague. Other art forms, including visual arts and literature, also showed and depicted the misery of this time. So it is very safe to say that every art and music, or every social aspect after the Black Plague hit, was sad and just plain depressing. You disgust me. Because the Black Plague killed millions and destroyed entire communities, old rules were ignored. The Catholic Church lost its influence. This sparked up radical revolutions such as the Protestantism Revolution. The people lost faith on the Catholic Church when so many people were dying and the church wasn't doing anything about it. In addition to this religious revolution, we also had a scientific revolution because of the Black Plague. The attempts to find a cure for the plague started the momentum toward the development of the scientific method or theory, and the changes in thinking rapidly occurred, which led to the Renaissance era. On to the Black Death doctors. Their primary responsibilities of a Black Plague doctor was not to cure or treat patients. Their duties were more administrative and laborious, as they kept track of casualties, assisted in the occasional autopsy, or witnessed wills for the dead and dying. Oh, unsurprisingly, this meant that some plague doctors took advantage of their patients' finances and ran off with their final will and testament. Hired and paid by local townspeople, plague doctors saw to everybody regardless of their economic status. Poor or rich, they were there. Though occasionally they did invent their own cures, which they included with a fee to wealthier patients. So they did take advantage of the wealthier. It was not immediately obvious to doctors and victims alike how exactly the plague spread. By the time of the 17th century, though, physicians had subscribed to the miasma theory, which was the idea that the contagion spread through foul-smelling air. Prior to that time, plague doctors wore a variety of protective suits, but it wasn't until the 1619 that a uniform was invented by Charles Lorme. The suit looked like a creepy bird with a big beak, and the beak was filled with spices and flowers because they thought that the odor of the Black Plague wouldn't hit them. You're kidding, right? Shut up, Pedro, come on. The Black Plague still exists. The plague continues to survive in the modern world. In Asia, Russia, the American Southwest, and everywhere else where rats and fleas still exist. Today, though, it's rarely fatal. It is easily treatable and not as deadly. But it's crazy to think about how the Black Plague still exists today, knowing just how deadly it was in the past. Well, that's all, Curious Peeps. Before you leave, share this video so the Curious family keeps growing. Make sure to follow me on social media to learn more curiosities. Make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. Again, my name is Curious Pepper. Do you like spicy history? Deuces!